Welcome to Gone Phishing, a show diving into the cybersecurity threats that surround our highly connected lives. Every human is different. Every person has unique vulnerabilities that expose them to potentially successful social engineering. On this show, we'll discuss human vulnerability and how it relates to unique individuals. I'm Connor Swalm, CEO of FinSecurity, and welcome to Gone Phishing. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Gone Phishing. I'm Connor, and today I am joined once again by the awesome, the great Wes Spencer. Wes was on the show just a few episodes back, and I wanted to have him back again to talk more specifically about a recent cyber breach. He told me, while we were getting ready for this, that he had an awesome story, so I'm actually really excited. And if there's anything, we can all learn from it. So Wes, without further ado, welcome back. How are you today?
Thanks for having me, Connor. I'm doing great.
Just great?
Phenomenally great. Better than the folks in the story I'm going to share. How about that?
I feel like if you said good, you'd still be doing better than the folks in the story you're going to share.
I would think so.
But that's awesome. I'll let you to it then. So you said you have an interesting story for us. I'll let you tell it.
Well, didn't you say something about marshmallows before? Don't we have to pull the marshmallows around?
Yeah, so I was just going to get marshmallows out and roast them over the fire while you tell this story, because I feel like it's going to be either a spooky ghost story or it's going to be wonderful and relaxing, like I'm camping in the summertime.
Yeah, don't you love those, these dark, scary campfire stories? By the way, breach stories are like that. Like, no one ever wants to hear what I do in security, like around the family table, like, oh, boring, whatever, nerd stuff, until they have a breach story. Then they're like, wait, what? Tell me more. That really happened? Are you kidding? So I'll tell you one. This is a fairly recent one. So MSP that I know, no names will be shared. They were in the good mid-sized MSP, nothing special about them. And they were courting a very large client who had a local branch inside their main home or their main town they work out of. But the client was quite large, like really, really big. They just happened to have we'll just call it a factory that was there. And so they've been having some trouble with their local IT, and we're looking to make some changes. And so they talked to the MSP and they're like, oh, we'd love to, help you. We can do everything you want. We're great at this. And so what was interesting was this client was by far the largest client that they had ever taken on, by an order of magnitude bigger, right? And so the MSP was super pumped about this, because from their point of view, they're like, whoa, look at the new revenue we're going to get out of this. I mean, we quoted them this crazy number, and they were like, yeah, no problem. Let's make this happen. This sounds great. I guess from them, it was cheap. And so they went and they actually hired a dedicated account manager for this role. They hired 2 or 3 techs to be able to support it. And they were totally, they bit off more than they can chew, 100%. But they, what could possibly go wrong? That kind of money coming in, we'll go fix any problem. We'll throw money at the problem. What could we possibly have, right? So everything's going fine for a few weeks, but the onboarding took a really long time for the MSP. It was slow to get them going, because they're working with the local branch, and the headquarters, it's further away, it's a lot more work to kind of get everything filtered through. And so over time, they had slowly started to get things kind of put up in place. They did get an EDR rolled out, and the EDR was there, and it was basically alerting and things like that. Well, what happened was late one night, and I kid you not, it was during a very big sports ball event, is all I'll say.
It's interesting how it all happens at times like that, right?
Yep, it always is these times. Yep,
the infamous 3-day weekend.
That's right. Yep, if you know what we're talking about, the July 4th a couple years ago. So this is a big sports ball weekend. It happened to be a Sunday, so you can probably guess what the event was. And the account manager for the client got a call during the middle of the sports ball game. And she's talking to him. They're like, yeah, nothing's online right now, and I think we're okay. It might just be some kind of bigger outage with our headquarters, but we've got some of the folks in the Middle East that are coming online for our factories. Just wanted to see if you guys are aware of anything. Well, I don't know. I should click. Yeah, no, everything's good on our end. But if you can't reach anything, that's strange. So they go and they try to go into the RMM. The RMM is a tool they use to connect and do things. So they connect, and sure enough, everything's offline over there. They can't see anything either. And so now they can't connect to those machines. They're not available online. They were trying to flail around. Is this an outage, an internet outage? That's what they thought it was at first. And so they try not to panic the client, because they're still onboarding them, still getting everything going. And but the account manager is smart enough to say, I am going to call our president and just let him know what's going on. And so he was already pretty inebriated in the middle of the game and super loud. And he's like, yeah, just try to take care of it. Just whatever you need. Call me back if you need it, but whatever. And so, he hung up with her. And so they're still flailing around. She gets a couple of like the local IT guys that are on call. They're not like security people. You're trying to figure out what's going on. Those jokers reset the RMM, trying to figure out what was going on.
Mm.
And that was a big mistake because then they fully lost their connection and they lost a ton of data. If you don't know, when you restart a machine, you lose a lot of the forensics data that was there. So sure enough, finally, some of the Middle Eastern folks start coming online and they start calling in because all of the computers are not accessible. And there's now this text file that's on every single desktop. And they open it up and it's a ransomware note. And it says, we've encrypted all your files, all your machines. So now it goes red hot, right? Now they are very angry because they're losing millions and millions of dollars, or they're about to. And you're talking about a company that's got offices all over the world. And so they are now like, you will fix this problem. What's going on? How could you let this happen? Blah, blah, blah. So the MSP is flailing. They have no idea what's going on. So she calls the CEO up, the CEO of the MSP, and says, hey, this is bigger. It wasn't an outage. It looks like it's ransomware. He's like, well, what are you guys doing? Are you fixing it? And so they're panicking. They finally bring their security person from the MSP onto the call. And he's normally like this really good guy and totally understands, cool under fire. Well, he panics and cracks under the pressure because he got brought into it. It was late at night and he was probably having a few drinks himself. And so long story short, this thing went really, really south and they couldn't figure out how to fix it. They couldn't figure out how to bring anything back up online. They were getting screamed at from the client because of all this money they're losing and totally out of no ability to know what happened. So what ended up happening was they didn't have cyber insurance. So they finally had to just pull in with a ton of money at the cost of the MSP and the client, digital forensics firm who came in, started assessing the situation, discovered it was actual ransomware. Everything had been encrypted. And the problem was, and this is where the darkness gets to the whole thing, is they were still in the middle of onboarding, Connor. So they didn't have backups made, none at all. There was nothing. And it was because it was a handover. And then come to find out, this is where it also gets nasty, is they were only one part of the solution provider for all of the IT presence this big company had. They thought they were doing everything. Well, come to find out, a lot of the other branches had their own IT. And so they walked into the middle of a situation. They never bothered to ask the questions to the client of like, what does your entire corporate IT look like? Who manages what? What's our responsibility? They just rammed right into the situation. Their MSAs in the aftermath of the breach were really bad. They didn't dictate when they became a client versus when the onboarding would finish. So they ate a ton of cost on their own liability to get everything up and running. The client had to pay the ransom demand, but the MSP lost tons and tons and tons of time and resources and money on the full imaging, restoration, reinstalling everything. It ended up being a colossal. Of course, they fired the MSP at the end of it, right? So not only did they get the public embarrassment, not only did they get a ton of revenue they thought they were going to make, it just goes downhill fast. They burned thousands of people hours into the response and recovery of all of this. That all of this could have been avoided had they had much clean and clearer like onboarding processes and really steering them through a methodical process to build this out. They didn't do any of that. And so just in their hunger and rush for money, they completely set their company back at least a year in terms of revenue. So an unbelievable story. And, you just watch this firsthand and you're just like, I can't believe this is happening to you guys. Like, what is going on? And by the way, I'm sure all of this started with a human, right? Because I'm sure it came, I'd have to see from the forensics, but I'm sure it came from a phishing email that they got directly in. And the other thing too that stuck out to me, Connor, and I'll just finish on this, is the fact that the account management people led this whole thing from the very beginning. Like, where were the security people? The second they said, hey, things are offline. I'm not saying it's a breach, but can someone take a look at this or an incident? No, it was the account management people that were just more focused on saving the account than it was doing the right thing to limit the blast radius before things got really, really bad.
Yeah, it definitely, there's a concept you and I talk about a bunch, but you first told me about it a while ago, which is having a breach occur is no longer an if, it's a when conversation. And it feels like if that would have been the pervasive mindset from everybody, MSP side, client side, that there would have been a lot of things done differently. What are some of the things you think that we could learn from that incident? I could think of a couple, but
Well, I'll piggyback on what you just said. MSPs are waking up to the fact that you have to operate like this is going to happen to you at some point, which means, have you had a good attorney review your MSAs, your master service agreements? Have you actually worked through and built a good incident response program? Have you communicated that with your client? And are they under the same level of understanding as you are with incident response and knowing what you do, what they do? Does the client have cyber insurance? Do you have what's called Tech E&O insurance for yourself? Are you educating your client all the way across this journey? Because we just don't do that enough. And we think we can do it when something happens, it hits the fan. And that's when things get way, 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 way worse because we're not operating on the same wavelength at all.
yeah, it's I educate a lot of MSPs today. It's the questions you don't ask are more damaging than answers to the questions you do ask.
Yes.
Is that one of the stories your kids actually like to hear at the dinner table, or did that not get past the bar for that?
I have to spice it up even a lot more than that just to get them to be even remotely interested. I have to give like the hacker a name and, they got to be, some kind of fight and they have to go like fly and duke it out with them, things like that, So I do spice it up a little bit for the kids, but hey.
Awesome. Any last minute pieces of advice, anything you'd like to say to the folks before we hop off of here?
Just stories are good because they really help you understand what could happen. And clients should know it's good to have an augmentation of like a bunch of stories stored up in your brain that you can always tell clients when it's time to talk, because everyone loves a good breach story. So yeah.
Yeah. That reminds me of what's happening in cybersecurity. What I saw happening in cybersecurity is we're talking to people about a concept, cybersecurity, in ways that they don't understand, about things they don't feel like they should care about. And I felt the exact same way when I would talk about the math I enjoyed doing in college. So I can see that. I can definitely see us benefiting from talking similar languages. So, and thanks for that story, by the way. You didn't quite have marshmallows over an open fire here, but it definitely felt like I was listening to a scary story. So thanks so much for joining me. If people wanted to reach out to you, whether that's to hear more wonderful stories, whether that's just to connect and learn a little more, where would you like them to do that?
Yeah, a couple places. If you need help with cyber insurance, reach out to us, fifthwallsolutions.com. Easy, jump right in. We'll help you, whether you're an MSP end user, whatever you may be, we'll help you there. And if you want to follow me, LinkedIn, just Wes Spencer, you'll turn right up. And same with YouTube, just Google me there or whatever you search for there, I'll come right up as well.
Wes Spencer, the self-proclaimed dictator of the channel. We'll be sure to put that in the show notes. And we'll put all of Wes's information in the show notes for all of you listening. But thank you so much for joining me today, Wes.
Thanks, Connor. It was a pleasure.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Gone Phishing. If you want to find out more about high-quality security awareness training campaigns, how to launch them in ways that actually engage employees to change their habits, then check us out, FinSecurity, at finsec.io. That's PHINSEC.io. Or click all of the wonderful links in our show notes. Thanks for fishing with me today, and we'll see you next time.